Welcome back to episode 54 of the What If It Works podcast. I am so excited for multiple reasons. Reason number one, it has been 1 year since the start of the What If It Works podcast. So thank you so much for those of you who have been listening and engaging and taking what you've learned in this podcast and applying it to your life. We are here to create change, and you are doing that each and every day. Another reason I'm excited is I have a guest with us today. Sara Gagnon is a relationship coach, and we're going to talk all about trust. And this is part of a series for the month of August. We're going to be breaking down what is trust, do you have a trust issue, and how you can handle that. Before we get started, Sara, tell us a little bit about yourself and your coaching journey.
Okay, happy to be here. So like you, Ann, I am a former full-time educator, but now just teaching part-time, and also just fell in love with coaching about 3.5 years ago. And what I really loved is working with individuals on self-esteem, self-worth, and when I work with couples, I love figuring out communication and how to shorten up that conflict time so they have more time for connection. Um, yeah, it's great.
I love that
I
so much.
Yeah, I work in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin through Empath Counseling and Wellness, and most of my clients kind of describe my coaching style as drive-through coaching, meaning I get to business fast. There's no BS. I'm a straight shooter, and people see results in like 3 sessions, which I love because I'll go as fast as they'll allow me to. So thanks. Glad to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk to you because as a culture coach, yes, I'm working on relationships with my clients as well. It's just workplace relationships. And so you're going to be able to help us answer some of those workplace relationship questions.
Yes.
But also, if you are listening and maybe you work from home or you're self employed, we are going to be talking about all kinds of relationships today and really getting into that issue of, is it a trust issue? If
Yeah.
you have not listened to episode one was all about how you need to get so focused on building trust at work. And so why not a year later really dive back into that topic of trust? So today I want you to be thinking about, are there relationships that you have? Are there people that you're working with, or maybe it's even your spouse, that a situation has maybe arose that you're like, man, is this a trust issue? Or it might even be a communication issue, or it might be a combination of both. The reason this is near and dear to me is I have had so many clients who've come to me and said, well, this is the situation, and we're not sure why people are acting that way. So, for example, I worked with a management group, and they were seeing lack of engagement with their employees. So they knew there were issues. They knew that people were kind of talking behind the scenes about
Mm-hmm.
work in a negative way. And so they wanted to get really ahead of it. And so they asked for feedback. And they said no one responded to their survey. They said at the end of the survey, we said, what should management know to make better decisions and for you to create, a better culture here at work? And they said no one responded or filled it in. And right when I heard that in our meeting, I said, that's a trust issue. If
Absolutely.
you have low engagement, if you have people not even feeling willing to provide feedback or share what they're really thinking, there might be an issue of them not even feeling valued and that you're going to do anything with that information. In this episode today, we're going to help you understand what is trust, look for signs that you have high trust or even broken trust, and really talk about why it's a critical piece to grow trust back if it has been broken. So let's start there. Sara, help us out. What is trust?
For me, I thought a lot about this, and it's a feeling backed up with evidence. And the evidence for me needs to be consistent and over time. I think that gives people a chance to be human. So that's kind of what trust is for me. How about yourself?
I agree with you. I really am looking for that I feel safe, that I
Yes.
feel willing to be myself if there's trust in a relationship or trust with even, a company or things like that. I'm looking for how able am I feeling to be myself.
I keep thinking about the word consistent and I'm like, why is that so important to me? And I think it's because when I trust somebody, I go to them more often. So that's an indicator. And if they come back to me, that's also an indicator of there's trust being built. And so that word really stands out to me in my own definition.
Yeah, and I think that's that evidence, right? We're
That's
always
right.
looking for evidence on if there's trust or if there's not, and I love what you just said because it shows you that this is evident that this is happening, that trust is there. And I
Yeah.
want to talk about a little bit of what kind of signs might we see to know that trust is broken and that maybe there's some lack of trust in a relationship.
Yeah. Well, for me, it aligns with when words and actions don't match up, and that consistency isn't there. And then also paying attention to just your natural instincts. We were all built with this primal ability to feel out a situation or a vibe in a room with the people that we're working with or in a relationship with. And I think social media has really coined that as a red flag or a green flag. And when you feel that red flag, you should allow that to speak to you, to guide you to the next move. And if we don't, I think that we feel like we've almost betrayed ourselves a little bit because we didn't listen
Mm.
to our natural instincts.
I love that. I feel like a separate episode should be Do I Trust Myself? Later
Yeah,
in the series, we're going to have to dive into that because I do think we can be talking a lot about other people, but man, if we don't even trust ourselves, it's going to impact how we trust other people and how they
that's
trust
right.
us too.
Hmm.
Yeah. Would you say you have an example from your past where you felt that red flag like in your gut?
I have. It's kind of like when sometimes my brain has a story and wants to override my green flag or red flag. Like I'll have a natural instinct, like, don't trust this situation. Like back in college, I think I wanted to go to a party and I got a red flag, an instinct, and I decided to stay back and I got busted. Great. I,
Yeah.
went through with whatever I was feeling. But there are other situations in which I can feel my brain saying, like, you should just trust everybody. Like, I just got a new job and I started working in a new district and I wanted to trust everyone. And it did not go well because my brain said that would be a good way to be. And for some reason, it just took so long and I felt so um, kind of attached to the time that I had. I thought trust should be quicker, and it really is
Ooh.
so slow. Trust is slow. We need time to develop it, to see if there's that consistency, to see if there's evidence. And I was a little bit too connected to how fast it should be. And that was something I needed to work on and reflect on.
Oh, I can feel that to my core. I openly trust every human I meet. You have to break my trust.
Ah,
But I've met a lot of people who are the other way, who
oh,
are, I don't trust anybody.
they put
You
a
have to
wall up?
prove to me. Yeah. And you have to prove to me through your evidence, through your words and actions being in alignment, through your consistency before I even give you a chance to
Yeah.
trust you. And that one's hard for me coming from a place of, let's just go. Let's
Do you
just do
think
the
that's
things, right?
where some conflict happens at work? That there are some Anns out there who are fully
Oh, yeah.
trusting, and then there are some other people who are like, I can't do that. And then you have to work on these projects
Yeah.
together, and there's some conflict there. Yeah.
Yes. And I think those of us who trust openly expect everyone else to
Yep.
trust us as quickly as we trust them.
Hmm.
And then it feels muddy and murky and like, you know, that it's just not smooth. And I think some of us instantly then feel betrayed and like our trust
Yes.
has been broken when really nothing is really broken that trust. It just doesn't feel as natural as we want it to, like you said.
Do you
Yeah.
feel like you
Though,
pull back when you're in that situation? If you come up to a
mhm.
person who has a wall, or do you keep
Oh, yeah.
trying? Okay.
I'm somebody, if our vibe doesn't match
Yeah.
right away, I do pull back. And
Mm.
then it becomes, who is it necessary for me to engage with? And
Hmm.
then I go all in with those individuals.
That makes sense.
But absolutely, I find myself, if I see someone on the defensive right away, I evaluate, is this even a relationship I want to pursue?
Yeah.
Or they don't even trust me. Let's just put our time and energy into someone else or somewhere else. So
Hmm.
that's a really great question. And I'd love to know, if you are watching this on YouTube, comment below. Are you someone who trusts quickly, or does it take you a long time and you're looking for that evidence? If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, go ahead and comment on the podcast episode itself. We would love to know. What do you think? Do you think the majority of people are quick, or do you think
I
people are
think they
skeptical?
want to be described as that. I think, like, I
Oh,
want to be described as someone who trusts everyone right away, but I think I'm a wall person if I really had to think about it.
yeah.
I want to protect first. But sometimes, that impression that I want to give overrides that. And so I become the person who wants to be trusting and trusted, but I still have that wall inside of me. So I think it oscillates. I don't know.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from the teaching world, I think there are a lot of educators who go in trusting their kids right away, which, by the way, if you're an educator listening to this, please keep doing that, because I think there are some kids who don't trust adults and don't trust the school system based on maybe some things they're hearing from their parents or things they've experienced themselves. And when we hold ourselves back in trusting other people, they will definitely have that wall built up as well. And so, why is it critical for you to recognize where you're at with trust? And why is it critical for you to go all in? Couple reasons. Number one, trust is reciprocal. If I don't trust Sara, and
Mm-hmm.
Sara recognizes that. She has that red flag, that gut instinct. She's not going to just open up and start trusting me, right? We just got done saying that we can kind of feel it and then we react according to what we feel. And so, as leaders, we need to make sure that we are starting that trust bridge because it is reciprocal. Us knowing that
Absolutely.
now you are armed with that information, that if you're a leader, you really do need to extend that trust out to other people first so that it can be reciprocated. The other thing that I learned really quickly in education is trust brings out the best in others. And think about an environment where you did trust other people. What were you getting from those people? Whether that be vulnerability, creativity, willingness to go above and beyond. Maybe you led your office in an activity and people showed up early or they stayed late to clean up. That is because of trust. They are willing to do more and be more of themselves when they feel they are in a trusted environment. And the third reason
Absolutely.
that it's super critical is trust overcomes change. People are willing to overcome change easier if they trust that someone has their best interest at heart or that someone's watching over them. We saw this big time during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Businesses that did not have trust with their employees left, and they felt
That's right.
okay leaving because there was a big change coming and they didn't know how it was going to impact them and they didn't feel like their best interests were going to be looked over. And they left thinking about, as a leader in your work environment or as a leader in your home or as a leader within your friend group,
Mm-hmm.
really helping there be trust so that when changes happen, which we know things are going to happen, right, Sara?
Mm-hmm.
Like your world
That's right.
sometimes gets thrown upside down.
That's right. I believe we have to have trust. It's so critical because of the plot twists, right? That the world throws at us all the time. And we need to have a safe place to land. That's what I think of when I think of how critical trust is. If something goes wrong, where am I going to go? Who am I going to be vulnerable with? And where am I going to heal and reveal to move on from whatever life has just thrown at me? So to me, that feels like the biggest reason why we need trust in all of our relationships. And when I applied for this part-time teaching position at a new school, I'm used to having like all my staff around me and having all this trust, people knowing who I am, what I can do. I had none of that. I walked in and I kind of did an interesting thing with trust. I decided to trust everybody, even though I'm kind of sometimes a wall person. I put up a wall to protect myself, but I kind of wanted to change. I wanted to do something different. And I wasn't seeing the results that I wanted because I thought trust was fast. And then
Mm.
I started to close down and I was like, okay, fine. I'm trusting nobody. I trust me. The end. Nobody gets any of me. And so I went the full pendulum to the other side. And that was so lonely. I was isolated. I felt not
Ooh.
happy going into work. It was a bummer. The only thing that made me happy was working with the students. But I do need colleagues to lift me up in between those moments with kids. And so I flipped right back to trusting everyone and reminded myself that trust takes time. Trust is slow. It's so much slower than I thought. And I'm so excited for this new school year to start so that I can have that in my mind walking forward. I'm really ready to try this point of view. So I'm glad we're talking about it today.
Yeah. Are you going back into the same district you were in last year?
That's right. Yep. Same
Yeah.
position, but everybody's going to be starting the school year together where I started halfway. So as
Ooh.
teachers, starting in January is a tough spot. And everyone's like, who's this new girl? Hi,
Yeah.
doing that whole thing.
And
What are you doing? Yeah,
yeah, and they're already rolling.
they're
And
rolling.
they're already, those of you who work in school settings, January, yeah, it's the halfway mark, but you're already cruising. And yes, having a new person come in, you don't necessarily make the time
Mm-hmm.
to get them in and help them feel included because you're busy and you're
Busy.
maybe even overwhelmed because it's after Christmas and it's just a lot, right? And so I love that you're going back in with that. You'll have the staff development time, the back to school workshop time
Can't wait.
to
This is
kind
the
of,
first time I've been like, let's
yes.
have PD. Let's go. I know. It's awful.
Okay,
But now I'm like, let's do it together. Can't wait for icebreakers. Let's go.
yeah. My extroverted heart loves professional development. And I have a best friend who's like, oh, the worst. I have to engage with people. And, sometimes it feels fake and all that, but I just love it so much. So that's hilarious that's
Well, I really
that's where
hope
you're
that I
at.
think that these icebreakers will build trust with new people. So now I know why they exist. When you're in a district for 20 years, you're like, I know everybody, let's go. But now that I'm
Let's
new, I'm
go.
like, well, I really need some icebreakers, y'all, for sure.
If you're listening to this and you're thinking this is getting too touchy feely and too emotional, I want to remind you trust is emotional. Okay. This is not a necessarily logical thing. This is very much a feeling. And I know I have 50% of male listeners, and I don't want my male listeners right now thinking to themselves, I don't need to hear this. Trust is logical. Trust is a feeling and trust is an emotion. And I know you guys feel that. And I know you have gut instincts as well. And I really want you to lean in on that today. We're going to be talking a little bit about what breaks trust, right? And so, what are some signs that you might have some trust issues? My favorite one when I was doing some research for this was anticipating betrayal. Sarah, when you
Oh,
hear, yeah, somebody anticipating betrayal, like how does that
oh,
even
I
just make you
know.
feel?
It makes me feel nervous.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
on edge and like you're
yeah,
just waiting for that other shoe to drop.
that's right.
That is mistrust. If you are listening to this right now and you're like, Ann, that's what I feel with my boss. That's what I
Hmm.
feel with this coworker. That's what I feel with my spouse. We're going to be talking all month long
You're in
about
the
how
right
to
spot.
rebuild that. You're in the
Yeah,
right spot. And that's okay to feel that way.
yeah.
It's really great to recognize that so that you can start to repair that and figure out how to make that trust reciprocal again. Being overly protective is another sign of broken trust. I see this a lot in
Hmm.
the work that I do and the people that I
Hmm.
work with. I'll say, well, what can you take off your plate? And they're like, nothing. I'm the only one who can do these 57 tasks. And that is a sign of lack of trust. lack
That's
of
right.
trust for your teammates, lack of trust for the other employees around you. If you lead meetings and during the meeting you're coming up with the list of all the things that need to get done, and then you say to yourself, well, I'll take care of this and I'll report back next week, your team is going to feel that, and they're going to see and feel that lack of trust that you potentially are bringing to the table. Another one is assuming betrayal. When someone says something to you or they tell you a story, or they're short with you, you just assume that they are not on your team, not on your side. If you hear someone knows some information about you, you're looking for, who to blame for that information, because
Mm-hmm.
you've assumed someone has betrayed you. These are all signs of mistrust. And in this episode, we really want you thinking about the relationships around you, and where is your level of trust? Are you feeling like there's betrayal against you? Are you thinking about a coworker that you work with and you just are always waiting for the negative situation to come around? Again, that's that mistrust. Go ahead.
I was just going to
Oh,
add, like, while you were talking, I was like, and I bet the listeners are thinking, Ann and Sara, I have a whole list of evidence that I could bring to court, and share with you to prove why this person is untrustworthy. And I believe that people gather evidence like they're lawyers for life. And
yes.
if we could just switch that POV somewhere in the next couple episodes so that you're not gathering evidence against yourself or this other person, I think that would be a beautiful, wonderful change. But it's hard to do. That's a big shift.
It is a big shift. We talk a lot about your RAS, your reticular activating system, where your brain looks for things it wants to see. So
That's
you
right.
feel that betrayal, and now you are on a mission. And I love that you said we become a lawyer. We're like gathering evidence, right? Like I'm out there like a detective, like looking for the look you give me from across the office, or the email you send that you don't have like a
Mhm.
thank you in, right?
That's
I'm
right.
like looking for this evidence that you've betrayed me and you don't trust me, and now I'm going to find it. And let me tell you, your brain is incredible. It's going to find evidence. It
Hmm.
wants to show you what you want to see. And so I love that idea of changing our point of view to look for ways that we do have trust, and then continue to grow that as well. We wanted to give those of you listening a little exercise to help you think about whether or not there is a relationship in your life that is lacking trust. And so we're going to give you a couple statements, and we just want you to, as you're listening to this, what do you feel? What do you feel in your gut? Or what do you see? Do you see a red flag or a green flag? I love that you said that, because I watch so many Instagram reels with green flags and red flags.
Hmm.
And so as we say these statements, we just want you to acknowledge and recognize what kind of feelings come to you. So maybe think about one relationship, or maybe there's a few around the office. And when you hear this statement, what do you think? So the first one we have for you is, I know this individual well. If you are struggling with another individual at work,
Hmm.
we want you to think about, do you know them well? Do you know how they respond? Do you know maybe what kind of history they have? Do you
That's
know
right.
their past? We see this a lot with new employees,
Hmm.
or I'm sure too for you, Sara, with like new relationships.
Hmm.
And we sometimes assume,
Yep.
based on other experiences that we have, instead of really thinking about how well do I know this person and how well do I know how they communicate. What else do you feel like within relationships do
I
you see
feel
that?
like another statement you could use to evaluate is this is trust issue is, do I feel lost? Do I feel
Mm,
confused? Like, what just happened? I thought this was going to happen and now this is happening. I'm confused. I feel like that's a good filter statement to use. Do I feel eh, betrayed? Am I feeling betrayed right now from whatever situation has just occurred in the office, in my home, in my relationship?
yeah. I can see that so much in the
Hmm.
workplace, of this feeling of betrayal. You
Yeah.
and I are chatting away in the break room and laughing and enjoying each other's company, and then we go into the meeting, and all of a sudden Sara makes a statement about Ann not getting something done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whether that's true or not, I feel like you just stabbed me in the back, even though
Right.
you are being very focused professionally. and, or bringing something up that's a true statement. So I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of that.
Yeah, and I just thought of something when you talked about that staff meeting or in a meeting when we're gathering evidence, going back to um, our previous comments. What is that evidence for? That's also something that you could ask yourself. What am I trying to do with this evidence to prove it to a colleague, to prove it to myself that this is a real trust issue? What are we doing with this proof? To embarrass this other human being? To I don't know, like what to what end is something that I think people should think about if they are a gathering evidence kind of person while they're looking at
Yeah.
whether or not it's a trust issue.
I think about your energy too. How much time and energy are you
Oh my
spending
gosh.
gathering that evidence when it could be spent
Oh,
somewhere else for
that's right.
yourself? So often I hear from employees that they're stressed and they're frustrated. And when we get down to their frustrations, it is interactions with others. It's not the
Yep.
workload, it's
Nope.
not the task list necessarily. It's the interactions with other people. And I think that's what we really want you thinking about is if trust isn't there, how can you rebuild it for
Yeah.
you so
Right.
that
Because
you
then
can thrive?
that energy
Yep.
shift happens and you end up having more freedom in your workplace. You're not as stressed out. You go home happier, you're at work happier, but it does take a mental shift to
Yeah.
step away from gathering evidence against X, Y, and Z for whatever reason. It is very
Yeah.
challenging to rebuild trust and to stop gathering evidence of betrayal.
If you have been listening to this episode and you are gathering evidence, we wanted you to do that. We did. We want you thinking about it, but we don't want you dwelling on it.
That's right.
So it's good to recognize it. And then in these future episodes, we're going to be talking about what to do, how to process that, and what actions you can take. But before we end this episode, what other statements are there, Sarah? What else do we want to
Okay,
see
we've got
what
a
their reactions are?
yeah. Something you can think about is, am I comfortable sharing this information or just information with this person? Yes or no? That's a really good indicator. Um, and can I hold myself back after I share with this individual from micromanaging what they're going to do with that information? So those statements kind of go together. And then
Yeah.
finally,
When
I
I
have, yep. And then finally, I had, am I willing to put in the work and reflection if the cards should fall in a negative way after giving this person a second chance? Because that, I think, is a really big indicator of giving someone, allowing them to be human, right? But you do have
yes.
to possibly do the work again, or you may have to take some time to reflect. If you're not willing to do that, it may be a trust issue.
In this series, we are going to be talking a lot about actions that you will need to take to either grow back trust with an individual who has betrayed you or grow back trust after you've broken trust with another individual.
Well, I think it's really important for people to understand that when trust is broken, when there is a trust issue, once you've figured that out using all the filters that we gave you, it's important to remember that trust is messy. It's a feeling, it's an instinct, and when it's broken, you have a lot of emotions trying to drive the car. What we want to do is to kind of take the wheel back and give you some logical steps that go with that messiness so that you feel like you have some control, because control feels like it's been ripped away from you when trust is broken. So that's what we hope to do for you.
Yes. And we are definitely going to be going through the steps to rebuild trust. And it is going to feel very clear on what actions to take. This first episode was really to get you just openly thinking about where might mistrust be in different relationships. And the next few episodes are going to be step by step. How can you start to rebuild that trust bridge plank by plank so that you can truly thrive in your relationships? As a coach, we coach people through taking action.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it important to take the actions when we're talking about building back trust?
It's important to do that because it shows that you're willing to grow and evolve and be your best self. If you're not willing to do that, I think you've surrendered to the wrong side, which is this is just who I am, or this is, I'm just going to accept the situation for what it is. And you're missing out on life. You're missing out on joy. What a bummer. So
Yeah.
let's dive in deep and figure out if there's a trust issue and figure out how to mend that so we can get back to joy and back to life and back to feeling energized.
I love that so much. I think that's what coaching does for you is helps you
Mm-hmm.
realize there's another outcome because
Yeah.
some of us have been stuck in
Yeah.
this outcome. We've been stuck in this situation. We've been mistrusted. We've felt a lack of trust and we don't know how to change that. And we're
Mm-hmm.
here to tell you there is a way to change it, but it starts with you, your mindset, and then your actions. And so join us back here next week when we talk all about what actions you can take after you've been betrayed. Because when you have been betrayed, you're going to feel disappointment, frustration, maybe some
Anger.
anger, some loneliness.
Yeah.
And we don't want that for you. We want you to feel that joy that Sara talked about and feel like you can thrive and you can be yourself in an environment. But it does take work to grow that back. It has been such a joy to have you on the podcast. I'm so excited for this series. I love the flow. Both of us have such a passion for helping individuals. Now, I help people at work, and I know you help them with all of their relationships. So, where can they find you and connect with you at?
Yeah, I do individual, in person, and virtual. So if you're interested in working with me, you can go to empathcounselingllc.com. We have a Facebook page, Empath Counseling. We have an Instagram page. I'm the one in charge of social media. So those words are straight from my heart. So I hope that you reach out.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you so much.